Hi, and welcome to the MVAC Lab. I'm Cindy Kutchik. Today, we once again welcome Loren Cade, a longtime friend of MVAC, to share his expertise on recreating and using bows and arrows as they were made in Wisconsin centuries ago. In an earlier video, he demonstrated how to make an arrow similar to those indigenous peoples here would have fashioned starting more than 1,000 years ago. You'll find a link to that video in the description box, so you can check it out if you haven't already. Today, from near his home in southwest Wisconsin, he focuses on how bows can be made, going from a log to a strung tool ready to fire an arrow. A quick note on terminology. In the world of recreational archery, people often use the expression traditional archery to refer to simpler bow forms without sights or other mechanical or modern additions. And they often use the term primitive archery to refer to traditional bows and arrows made of all natural materials. Now, we'll turn it over to MVAC Senior Research Associate and UWL Professor Emeritus Jim Theler, who will provide a little background and introduce Mr. Cade. We hope you enjoy this look at the complex process of making a traditional bow.
Hello, I'm Jim Theler. I'm a senior research archaeologist at the Mississippi Valley Archaeology Center, retired faculty at UWL, and I want to introduce Native American bow making today with my colleague and friend Loren Cade. I want to give a little background, a little archaeological background before we begin. We're going to be talking about a period of time that archaeologists have designated as the woodland time, the woodland period. And this is the time when we see the first use of mounds to bury the Native American dead, and we see the first pottery containers. That begins about 2,500 years ago in our part of the country, in western Wisconsin, generally in southern Wisconsin. About 1,500 years ago, we see a major transition. And the major transition we see right at about the beginning of when the effigy mounds start to be built. And this is a transition from a spear thrower, or an atlatl as they're sometimes called, where a single shaft is used with an extension to propel a spear, to the bow and arrow. And when archaeologists don't find atlatls per se in this part of the country, they're archaeological, and we don't find bows, but we find the projectile points, spearheads and arrowheads that are left behind. And about 1,500 years ago, we see a sudden transition to quite small projectile points. In this area, the earliest projectile point that we believe are bow and arrow points are called Honey Creek points. They're pretty widespread, and they seem to mark this transition from an atlatl to bow and arrow. Bows are so important in Native American societies. We go from an instrument like an atlatl, which is powerful, and you can shoot once or carry an extra spear and shoot twice, to a bow and arrows, where you can have a sheaf with 10 or 12 or 14 arrows and a good bow, and you can make multiple fast shots. It's a great advantage as a defensive posture, a defensive weapon, and as a hunting weapon. In southern Wisconsin, Native American peoples focused on the most important animal in the diet was the white-tailed deer. And I believe that the use of bows and arrows really allowed for Native American peoples, who we call late woodland, that built the effigy mounds, to really accelerate in population and become much more productive hunters with the bow and arrow. Bows and arrows are complex to make. Perhaps you saw Loren Cade's presentation of arrow production. People that think it's a simple process to make a bow are just incorrect. You have to know the correct woods. You have to know the grains, you have to be able to spot the flaws, you have to have it dried properly, prepared properly, and if it's not done so, the bow will fail very quickly and you'll be out. The interesting thing about bows and arrows, once they come in, everybody has to have one. The neighbor has it, you have to have it, because they're so efficient. Again, defensive weapon and hunting. They're remarkable tools. We will now be hearing from Lauren Cade on the making of Native American style bows. I known Lauren for 40 years, and he's been fascinated by the production and manufacture of Native American bows and arrows. And he is a true craftsman. He's studied this for decades. And he's an excellent person to have demonstrate this. Someone who's used these bows in hunting as well.
Hi, I'm Lauren Cade. I'm going to be talking a little bit about making bows and arrows of American Indians. There is 3 woods that we use up in this area, the upper Midwest. The one I have here on the bench is hickory. That is one of them. It seems that hickory is used more than any other variety. Ash is another wood that's used, and I think rarely black locust. The log we have here today is hickory. The log I'll be demonstrating is also hickory. That was donated by Jim Theler, and we were able to make, in the process of making 3 different bows out of that one log. That's kind of unusual. Usually you get 1 or 2 out of a log, but we're going to make 3, it appears. I'm going to demonstrate tools that we use for splitting. I'm going to back away here just a little bit. I like to use hand axes in the splitting process, and what we're going to do where this cross is here, we're going to attempt to split the log in half, and once that is done, we'll take each half and then split it again into quarters, like that. I like to use hand axes because the blades are nice and thin. They work well for splitting. Also, in this one stave, you'll see this black mark here. That is where the bow is going to be. I try to pick an area where there's no knots for my first bow. And the reason for that is knots are a problem for bow makers. Okay, in this demonstration I'm going to show how to remove bark from the staves. Each stave has the potential for a bow, as I mentioned before. Using a draw knife, you would pull the bark off. Be very careful not to cut through the backing of the bow, because that's the strength of your bow. So you've got to be careful not to cut through that. If you run into areas like here, there's a knot, you'd probably use a wood rasp to work around that so that you don't damage the grain. That's very important. Once you get all 4 staves done, you set them aside from 1, 2, maybe 4 years. It takes that long to dry some of the hickory products. The moisture content should be down to about 8 to 9%. Okay, in this presentation we're taking the Bowstave that has been dried now from 1 to 3 years, maybe 4 years, and we're laying out the bow, actually drawing out dimensions. I'm hoping you can see this. There's black marks along the limb on both sides. That is the dimension of your bow. But when you lay that on the stave, you've got a lot of wood to remove. And we do that with wedges. And wedges, using a tool like this, splitting it and removing it on both sides and the belly. Remember, the back, you don't touch it. Once you get both sides and the belly removed, then you can start reducing the two sides with the draw knife. And that is simply taking a draw knife and pulling it towards you like this, removing that wood, including that black mark. That black mark comes off at this point. And you do that on both ends, on both sides of each end. Once that is done, that is the dimension of your bow. You turn it on to the side, you'll see another black mark. And that has to be removed all the way through. But to remove it, you start at the center point of your bow, because you remember now you're on a taper, so you can't cut into the grain if you're cutting into the taper. You want to go with the taper. Using a draw knife, you remove everything down to this point. Turn it over. And repeat that. Taking it down all the way to the tip. Now that we've did the rough trimming on the bowstave, now we're going to do the fine tuning. And that is doing the precise measurement, starting at the handle. We want 9/16 of an inch. Now, that is exactly what we want, 9/16. Now we're going to move down the limb about 4 inches, and we're going to want 1/32 of an inch less. Okay, and then we'll flop the bow over and do the same measurement on the other end. And then we go down another 4 inches. This time we want a 1/2 inch. You see where we're going with this? Each 4 inches is 1/32 of an inch less. And we'll do that with this caliper all the way down till we go off the end, which is 3/8. We want 3/8 of an inch on each end. Once that is done, then we will file in our notches on each end. Now the notches is where your bowstring will go. We're going to put a tillering string right now. And the tillering will balance to see that our limbs are balanced, so both limbs will bend at the same time. Our next step is testing the tiller of the bow, and that is to see if both limbs are working together. We don't want one limb bending more than the other. So I'm going to bend it down. Go a little further. This one's at 3. Wait a minute, I'm not level here. There we go. 3.5. I'm still not quite level, am I? There we go. 3.5, 3.5, that's what we want. So I think our bow is in good shape. At this step, the next step will be to take the bow off the tillering board, take the tillering string off, then talk about sanding a little bit. Okay, our tillering process is done. Our bow bends properly. What we're going to have to do now is sand the entire bow. From even the back. You know, I mentioned that the back shouldn't be touched. Well, it can be for sanding. You're taking off the rough edges only. I'm using Primitive Tool. This is actually a copy of an arrow shaft smoother. It works very well for this. There's a groove you can go up along the limbs like this. Take off the rough edges, and especially the belly. That's where most of the rough edges are going to be. This process takes quite a while, so I'll talk about after the sanding is done, we have to put a finish on. And if you're a purist, you'd probably use bear grease and put that on the entire bow to waterproof it. However, I'm not a purist, so what I put on my bows is tung oil. I put on 2 or 3 coats of tung oil. That works quite well. And then at that point, we're going to demonstrate how to make a bowstring. We're going to talk a little bit about bowstrings now. In the primitive times, animal sinew, the backstrap of buffalo and so forth, were used to make bowstrings. They would weave them together. The sinew has to be moist, and they twisted them into what's called a Flemish twist. Other materials used are rawhide. Rawhide was used quite a bit. I'm not sure, we're not talking about taking hides off in large animals. I think they took them off squirrels and animals like that. Other materials are plant materials that was used, fibers. So that's 3 different types of bowstring. What I'm doing here is using modern bowstring. It's probably a form of dacron. And what I'm going to do is make 7 links. And we're going to form that into a Flemish twist. I've heard this type of material referred to artificial sinew. Then I'm going to tie it off. Okay, now we're going to be making a bowstring. We're going to twist it up using an electric drill. And in order to do that, I'm going to have to back away from the camera. The camera will stay focused on the string. Now I've reversed the power on the drill. We're going to reverse the twist. We're going to make a Flemish twist on this bowstring. And here we go. Now we've finished our twist on the bowstring. It's ready to put on a bow. I have a loop on one end. We'll put the other loop when we get the bow so we know what size the bow is. So the loop has to be about 2.5 inches shorter than the bow. This time we're going to do the Flemish twist by hand. And that takes a lot of time, so we're just going to do a short length of bowstring. And what I'm doing here, my right finger will twist the string and lap it over my left hand, and then I'll grab the other one, do a twist, and go over, twist, and go over, twist, and go over. You can see it's a slow process, but this is the way bowstrings were made for years. Probably hundreds of years. So what you're basically doing is twisting the bottom string to the right and then bringing it over top to the left. The important thing is to twist it with your right hand. Get that string twisted. Again, what we're doing here is making a Flemish twist bowstring, taking the thumb and finger of the right hand and rolling the string and then bringing it up over the top of the left hand, and the bottom string is twisted then, and it's just repeat. Twist and flip, twist and flip. I've only made one of these strings by hand in my life. You can kind of see why. But I still have that string on the bow at home. Well, that's probably about as far as we want to go today. So you get the idea how a hand-twisted bowstring is made. We've talked today about making a bow out of hickory. I've also made bows out of other wood, and this one happens to be white ash. This is my bow number 3, so this one's been around for a while. This has a draw weight of 32 pounds at 28 inches. It's a little bit longer bow. Our hickory bows were rated at 24 inches only. This bow is much different. This is made out of black locust. Bow number 4. I made this bow, then decided after construction to back it with animal sinew. So I have 2 coats of animal sinew. The glue is animal hide glue. It's kind of a unique experience. It takes a long time. You put these on fiber by fiber. You got to set aside a couple of hours to do that each time. This bow is made in what's called Eastern woodland tradition. So it does have a handle. You start seeing bows with handles on the eastern part of the United States after European contact. And I suspect they had more tools to work with. Rasps, saws, so forth. I'm kind of proud of this one. Another thing that's unique about black locust, a black locust bow, you have to remove all of the sapwood. The bow is made from the heartwood of the locust tree. So that would make it much more difficult in primitive times to remove that sapwood to make a bow. And I guess that's probably about all I have for you today.
Many thanks to Lauren for a fascinating foray into the methods of bow making. Just as wooden arrow shafts and fletching easily decompose in Midwestern soils, so do bows and their strings. The knowledge surrounding traditional techniques of bow making provides a deeper context in which to understand the projectile points and woodworking tools, such as abraders, that do survive and that we find in the field today. For more information, see the description box. And to further explore archaeological topics, find links to MVAC's social media, and view and subscribe to our monthly e-news, check out the MVAC website. You can also donate online to support MVAC's work, including our videos. Thanks for watching.